how I lost 10 kilos in 3 months so I didn't look like a beached whale on my summer holiday. Have you ever stood in front of the mirror, sucking in your stomach and angling yourself every which way to see if you can find your abs, and wondering why no matter how many diets you go on or how many hours you spend in the gym, you still don't look like the guys in the magazines? That's how I used to feel after years spent copying the workouts out of Men's Health, trying keto, intermittent fasting, and even thinking about signing up for a triathlon before I remembered how hard it is to swim, till I finally discovered a fat loss method that works for me, and in just 3 months I lost 10 kilos, transformed my body, and finally felt confident enough to take my shirt off at the beach and know for certain nobody would be giggling at my pasty white British body. Hi, I'm Ian Dowie, the personal trainer, not the old palace manager, and I'm going to explain the principles I learned on this diet and how I applied them to my life, so you can copy me and stop feeling self-conscious on your summer holiday and can enjoy the feeling of sun on your skin instead of hiding your beer belly under your t-shirt again. Let's go back to when I could not lose weight. I played rugby, I went to the gym, I took protein, creatine, ZMA, and I could not work out why I didn't look like the guys on the front cover of Men's Fitness. I was stuck in this cycle of permanently thinking I'd found the perfect diet to get me shredded super fast and feeling super motivated to having a few too many beers in the winner's lounge on a Saturday night after a big game, followed by a kebab on the way home, followed by a cooked breakfast, and then a lazy Sunday of not making any of my lunches for the week ahead. I wouldn't even realise I was not on a diet anymore. It's like I'd time travel to it suddenly being Monday morning. I was on the tube to work totally unprepared to eat healthy for the week ahead. I'd displayed this fatness bounce back ability so many times, I was starting to question if I was just one of those guys who could not get in shape. The first steps I finally took to solving this weren't adding any good habits to my life, but instead were removing the bad habits that were holding me back, because it's so much easier to burn belly fat by fixing the problems that we have now than adding on additional chores to our busy lives. And I'm going to go through these bad habits in detail. When I worked in an office, my desire to look like I went to the gym was really fueled by a bit of vanity and a bit of ego. I wanted to be the fittest person in the office, and I had tons of justifications as to why I didn't have the best rig. From, oh yeah, he looks better than me, but I'm way stronger than him. Or, yeah, I need a bit of extra ballast because I play rugby. And it turns out these justifications were a huge part of what was holding me back from burning the belly fat that I wanted to burn. I always went to the gym and people that knew me understood this, but I always felt like strangers wouldn't realise how much effort I put into training, because even though my arms and shoulders looked decent in a work shirt, as soon as I'd take my top off, there was this big hairy muffin top where I felt like my shredded abs should have been. So when I became a personal trainer, my motivation for fat loss completely changed, because now the success or the failure of my business and whether I could pay my bills or not literally depended on what I looked like in the mirror. Because if someone's hired me to help them banish the jelly belly, I can't really be stood there with a muffin top poking over the top of my joggers, can I? So I went to town on Google. I researched every major diet and workout plan, trying to figure out what made each of them work to burn belly fat. It turns out they all had the same core principles, and the rest was just fluff. Once I stopped chasing the perfect diet and focused on the core principles behind each of these successful diets, everything changed. And I'm going to talk you through those core principles now. The first principle is the foundation all of the others are built on. This was the first thing I had to get through my big, stubborn head. I had to own my own failure to burn belly fat. I wasn't fat because of bad genetics or a lack of willpower or because any of these guys are on drugs. I was fat because of my behaviour, and it was all my fault. I'm not talking about fat shaming myself. I wasn't looking at the mirror and calling myself names. I was looking in the mirror and taking ownership of my failure. And the cool thing about this is once I realised that I had the power to change how I looked, I was able to apply the following principles. I had always told myself I was only a few kilos away from being beach body ready, which led me to do super hard and restrictive, aggressive diets, which left me feeling really hungry and low on energy, which wasn't ideal at work. And it meant that subconsciously, I was always looking for an excuse to quit the diet because of how hard it was. The first time I'd go out on the piss with the lads, that excuse would fall right on my lap. So this time I told myself I wasn't going to rush. I was going to give myself 2 months to gradually get myself in the best shape I've ever been in my life. First of all, I focused on fixing my mistakes. Mistakes like having too many pints. When I would go out and drink too much, it wasn't just the calories from the beers that were affecting my belly. It was on top of that, the kebab I'd have on the way home and the fry-up I'd have the next day because I was too dusty to make myself a bowl of porridge. This didn't mean I turned into a monk and binned off my social life. I'd still go out with the lads, but I'd order a lime and soda or a Guinness Zero. And yeah, at first they'd tease me and then I'd get over it. And it wasn't long before these same lads would ask me what workout plan I was following because I was looking so much better than I'd ever looked before. Portion control. When I was measuring out my pasta, I would inevitably pour out way too much into the pan. And I solved this by spending less than a tenner on Amazon for a little digital scales. I didn't start measuring every little morsel of food that went into my mouth. I just stopped making enough pasta to feed an army and then had that with my regular portion of bolognese because I wanted the protein to make me feel full whilst I was on this diet. On top of fixing these bad habits, I then started to add a few more good habits. And I started by being more mindful about what I was eating. So instead of grabbing a maple and pecan slice on my way to the office for breakfast, I'd start my day with a protein shake and a large black coffee that would give me the energy to get through till lunchtime before I had any proper food to eat. I also started building extra activity into my day in a way that didn't feel like exercise. Where I was trying to be more healthy, I was also drinking more water. So I started taking the smallest bottle I could find with me into the office. And by using a small bottle, I had to keep on getting up from my desk and walk into the kitchen to refill it, as well as the regular trips to the toilet to unfill my bladder. And these extra steps that I was taking every day added up over time to me being much more active throughout the days and the weeks that I was burning my belly fat. As well as that, I'd take the stairs instead of the lift at every opportunity I could, and I always parked my car as far away from the shops as possible, which always annoys whoever my passenger is. And as for the gym, I focused on adding progressive overload to my workouts. So instead of just going in once a week, smashing myself to pieces so my legs hurt too badly to sit down on the toilet for the next few days, I started doing 2 or 3 30-minute workouts a week and only pushing myself to about a 7 out of 10 on the effort level, which meant that as my body was adjusting to these workouts, I could then do more and progressively make it harder and harder as my body was building muscle and being more capable of doing the extra work. And I'd use my phone to write down everything that I did in that workout so I'd know exactly how to make my training harder the following weeks. And here's where I noticed a massive problem with that. Every time I looked at my phone, I'd accidentally spend 5 minutes scrolling Instagram, which made me feel like my whole evening was spent at the gym and I never had a chance to relax after my work day. So to stop my workouts taking up so much time, I popped into WH Smith's on the way home from work and picked up a little cheap notebook because this would allow me to record all of my workouts so I could track how much stronger I was getting without costing me loads of wasted time on my phone. Now, in the first week or 2 weeks of burning off my belly fat, I did feel a bit hungry. And this is when I realised I hadn't properly felt hungry for as long as I could remember. And once I accepted that feeling a little bit hungry didn't mean I immediately had to go and have something to eat, I was easily able to continue with my fat loss. A bit of hunger is a great sign that what you're doing is working to burn your belly fat. So let's take a look at how my body changed over these first few weeks. And remember that to get to this change, it hasn't felt at all like I've been on a diet. So really, before I knew it, I'd lost 4 or 5 kilos in 5 weeks, which was already more than I'd usually lose before binning the diet and putting all of that weight and more back on again. But this time was different. I didn't feel like I was exhausted and already ready to stop. I felt like I was just getting started and I had loads of energy left in the tank. And this isn't just me. One of my clients, Matt, was in the same situation. Worked in an office, bit of a belly, had tried every diet under the sun, but nothing stuck. And we applied the same approach. No ridiculous restrictions because you can't keep that up for long enough to deflate the spare tyre. No unreasonable workout schedules, because we've all got jobs and we don't want to spend all of our evenings in the gym. Just small, sustainable changes, because whilst this isn't as glamorous as high rocks or intermittent fasting or 1 meal a day, these small changes are the underpinning of all of the successful fat loss transformations you see plastered on Instagram. In 3 months, he'd lost 8 kilos. And what's more important is he kept losing after that, and he kept the weight off since we stopped. And that's when I knew this method wasn't a fluke. By the time my diet felt difficult, I was already in the best shape of my life. People were telling me how great I looked, and the guys that had teased me about drinking lime and soda in the pub were now asking me for advice on how they could shift a few pounds. And this is when I decided to push for a nice round number of 10 kilos total lost, which doesn't take into account any muscle that I was building during this period. In the past, I would have been tempted to make changes to my diet at this point, because I still believed that diets had to feel really uncomfortable. But what I was learning is that what gives the best fat loss results is a slow, steady approach, where I trusted the process, that the changes I was making was building me the body that I wanted. And this gave me an unexpected bonus of building loads of confidence in myself, because it taught me that I'm not a man who gives up at the first sign of difficulty, and that over a longer time period, I can push through adversity in order to get something that I truly want. And this is the reason I say that fitness is the gateway drug to success in other areas of your life, which is way more important than a six-pack once you're a grown man and not a 22-year-old who's trying to get laid in Zante. So the changes I did make at this point were to reduce my portion sizes a little bit further so my fat loss didn't plateau. And I increased my gym sessions by adding 20 minutes on the cross trainer at the end of each of my 3 workouts. And look, at this point, it was starting to feel harder, but because I had already loads of fat loss results to show, I was really motivated to stick to what I was doing, because I could see the results of it working. So now the idea of being slightly more uncomfortable for 2 weeks felt like it was something achievable, whereas before I'd go off the deep end and go from no discomfort for maximum discomfort, I would get burnt out with fat loss after 2 weeks, which isn't enough time really to see any significant fat loss changes on your body. And the lessons that I learned throughout this diet made me feel like I was Neo in the Matrix. I felt I finally understood why all of those fad diets had failed me in the past. Not because they didn't work to lose weight quickly, but because they weren't sustainable enough to stick with long enough to lose the weight I needed to finally uncover my abs. I learned that I wasn't special, I wasn't different. I didn't need the latest and greatest diet or workout plan. I needed the most basic and unglamorous of approaches, which was portion control, generally being more active, and 2 or 3 workouts at the gym a week. Now, having cracked this fitness code, I'm never going to fall for another gimmick diet again, because I understand the foundations that they're built on, and I can tailor those foundations for either myself again or for any of the lads that I coach, because the best diet of all is the one that works for you, not the one that has the coolest sounding name. And here's how you can copy what I've done. I've put together everything that worked for me and all of my clients into a free guide, which you can grab below. And here's another little mental trick for you. Pretend it isn't free. Pretend you've paid £200 for it, because this way you'll actually take it seriously and finally lose the weight you've been trying to lose, and finally feel good about yourself on your holidays this year. And the best part of this whole experience for me is, now that I'm in shape, it is way easier to maintain than it was to get here in the first place. No more yo-yo dieting, no more starting over from scratch after catching a glimpse of myself in the mirror. So whenever I do put on a few kilos, like over Christmas or when I get back from holiday, I know exactly how to shift it again in the shortest time possible. And that's the real win. So download the guide, copy everything I've talked about on here, get moving, get going, and I hope it works out. Comment any questions you've got down below and I'll answer them all. And if you want to hear more about the Don't Waste Time program that Matt was on, you can check that out below as well.